It was a beautiful morning, and I got up early to make breakfast for the boys, enjoying the quiet peace that filled the house. And the light was soft and golden as it filtered through the windows, casting this warm glow over the kitchen. And then my phone began to buzz. I ignored it because it was Shabbat, but then it buzzed again, and buzzed again, and buzzed again. And I glanced down and I saw a flood of messages, and a cold dread settled in my stomach as the news of Israel poured in. We were all waking up to a reality that was hard to comprehend. At Temple Bethel, our Torah study group is usually robust with about 40 people gathered in person and online. But that morning, the room, it felt different. The usual hum of the conversation, the rustle of the pages was absent. I opened by acknowledging what by then everyone knew, that there had been a terror attack in Israel, but we were still piecing together what had happened. We commenced with our Torah study, but as I taught, the buzzing and the messages kept coming in, and the weight of the situation grew heavier. And after the class ended, I went to Temple Israel and then to Or HaTorah to Chabad to speak briefly with Rabbi Wolk and Rabbi Groner. We understood that in moments like these, we needed to come together, Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, as one community. Because this was a moment that I will always remember, experiencing October 7th as Jews in America, united by a collective pain that we hadn't experienced in a very long time. October 8th, a different kind of pain took hold. A new kind of loss as we began to recognize the extent of the tragedy. With broken hearts, we learned of the unimaginable violence our brothers and sisters in Israel endured, and the loved ones that were taken hostage, of the families and communities completely shattered. We witnessed and continue to witness the brutalities of terrorism and war on multiple fronts. And as a rabbi, I have heard a range of feelings and debate about the war. And I understand that many people have legitimate disagreements with Israeli policies and feel conflicted about the actions of its government. I, too, have been publicly critical when I have disagreed. Criticism and productive debate are vital parts of our tradition. And I want to be clear that criticism of Israel is not inherently anti-Semitic. Just as criticizing the United States does not make someone a traitor. Challenging Israel's actions can come from a real place of care and concern for its future. But what emerged on October 8th felt like a descent into something more dangerous. Because calls for death to Jews were not just heard in distant places like Tehran. They erupted in our own cities, on the campuses where our children learn, and in some, our workplaces. Suddenly, we were facing a newly public and seemingly publicly sanctioned wave of vitriol right here. And in many places, the distinction between critiquing a government, the Israeli government, and denying the humanity of its people, our people, seemed to vanish overnight. And we found ourselves asking, how did we get here? For decades, we told ourselves that anti-Semitic incidences were isolated to hateful individuals or particular groups rather than a reflection of the broader world. Our Constitution upholds the principle that even the most abhorrent rhetoric is protected under the right to free speech. We knew that anti-Semitism was working beneath the surface. We saw it flare in Pittsburgh, in Charlottesville, in Colleyville. Jewish communities experienced multiple hate crimes. And still, we thought that hate was isolated, believing that America was different, a place where we could live without constantly looking over our shoulders. And then October 7th happened. And October 8th followed. And every day since, it has become clearer and clearer how misguided we were. Brett Stevens spoke in Charlotte and said that there should be a sign in each Jewish organization, each synagogue and school that reads, "Every day is October 8th." Because October 8th wasn't just the day after an attack in Israel. It was the day that we woke up to see the world differently here in the United States too. It was a day that we became October 8th Jews. Now, for many of us who have dedicated our efforts to social justice, we watched in disbelief as the institutions that we trusted, those that we thought shared our values, either remained silent or worse, found ways to justify, excuse, or ignore the unjustifiable. Longtime allies who stood with us after Pittsburgh, with whom we marched for racial justice and LGBTQ and reproductive rights, now refused to acknowledge our pain. And it wasn't just coming from one side. We watched elected officials meet with white supremacists. We heard pundits excuse Hitler's actions while they downplayed Nazi atrocities, and saw graffiti littered with swastikas just miles from here that called for a white America. October 8th reminded us that hatred has not one political home, but instead comes from both ends of the spectrum. And once again, we are caught in between, like the center of a rope used in a game of tug-of-war, constantly taut and tense, yanked back and forth. This is a moment of reckoning. And it's a time to confront the hard questions. Where do we go from here? How do we move forward when the ground beneath us feels so unsteady? This isn't a sermon that I want to give, but it's one that I need to give to help frame some of the challenges before us and find our true north. Because we have a choice to make. We have a choice to make. We can let fear and we can let despair consume us so deeply that we question our identity. Or we can choose the path of our ancestors, which is rooted in courage and resilience. Our strength comes not only from enduring, but from thriving. Because we have faced hate before, and each time we've turned it into fuel for growth. Each time we have created vibrant, flourishing communities. Each time we have proven that our resilience is not just about survival, but about creating a future of Jewish purpose and Jewish possibility. And this time will be no different. We are all October 8th Jews now, standing in the light of a new reality. And we cannot let the lessons of October 8th slip away. In the days that followed, many of us wore Stars of David with newfound pride and committed to lighting Shabbat candles every week. We must carry that pride and commitment with us permanently, for it will certainly shape our future. We'll rise, not as victims consumed with vigilance, constantly on high alert for danger or for slights. We'll rise as a people committed to building something enduring, beautiful, and strong. I've been thinking about our ancient ancestor Jacob, not the young man who tricked his brother Esau, or who spoke the words above our ark that dedicated a place and called it Beth-El, or who wrestled with angels and was given the name Yisrael, Israel, but the Jacob later in life who is frail and lying on his deathbed, his heart heavy with worry. And Jacob knows that his time is running out, and he's afraid that the covenant, the sacred promise Jacob made, between his family and God might not survive after he's gone. And Jacob looks at his sons, each of them so different, each of them carrying their own mistakes and regrets. And one question haunts him: have I done enough? Jacob's sons see the tear in his eye and the fear in his eyes. And instead of dismissing it, they do something unexpected and profound. They lean in close and they say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Now, we often translate these words as, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. But the rabbis who wrote this story after the destruction of the temple made a sort of play on words based on Jacob's name, which was Israel. Shema Yisrael. It's as if his sons are saying, listen, Dad. Listen, Jacob. We hear you. We know you're worried. But we want you to know that something else. Adonai is our God. We are holding on to the covenant. We are holding on to you. We've got this. Judaism will not die with us. Jacob could finally die in peace, knowing that his family would carry on the covenant, and that they would choose to remain true to their sacred responsibilities, even in a world that was filled with uncertainty. Now, for the rabbis who wrote the story, it was a much needed reminder, a kind of bridge across the centuries that reminds us that Judaism isn't just an inheritance, but rather it is a living commitment that we choose to make every single day. Now, I'm standing here today wearing a talit that I specially ordered in Israel last summer before October 7th. And it arrived in Charlotte the week after October 7th. And I chose its colors on purpose because the fringes of the tzitzit are woven with both blue and white. And the blue strands and the white strands are tied together. In ancient times, the blue, the techelet, was a rare and precious dye. And the blue represents the heavens and the depths of the sea. It is the color of infinity, of the mystery of God. It reminds us of our duty to see beyond the immediate, the ordinary, and to strive for something higher. Now, the white strands are simple and unadorned and plain. And they symbolize our commitments, our acts of kindness, our decisions to choose fairness, to do what is right, even when no one is watching. The white strands, well, they anchor us in the here and now, in the physical world, and in our tangible actions. And these threads remind us that our identity, it's not a choice between the spiritual and the practical. Our identity comes from tying them together. The white strands that pull us into our duties, into ourselves and our families and our communities. And the blue strands, the techelet, that lift our gaze to the heavens to remind us that our actions must reach for something beyond ourselves, to the sacred and the transcendent. This is why the Israeli flag is blue and white. It is taken from the colors of a talit described in the Torah. Now, wearing this talit, I feel connected to the generations who came before us, who chose every single day to weave their lives with these same colors and these same values. And I am reminded to live with the courage that comes from knowing who we are as Jews and what we are called to do as Jews. Just as Jacob's children stood together and said, "We've got this," we too must stand together now, and that is the moment that we are in. This is that moment for us. Because when everything around us feels so uncertain, it is these roots, these choices, this active combination of white and blue, our actions and aspirations, that will hold us steady. They remind us that we are not just individuals navigating a chaotic world. We are part of a story and a people that has withstood the generations of turmoil with something sacred that can guide us forward. Now, as you heard from Alan Kronovit and Rabbi Nichols, our board recently developed a new mission and vision and strategic plan for our congregation. And it was an inspiring process, listening to hundreds of members of our congregation dream big and think about the future and help shape our community's direction for the next generation. As Alan shared, our new mission is to cultivate connected, proud, meaningful Jewish living that inspires change in our world. I want to tell you something. As we finalized that mission statement, I experienced a near existential crisis. Even rabbis don't have all the answers. We struggle with this stuff too. Why was I struggling? I was struggling because many in our congregation take deep pride in our history of social justice. And for the 17 years of my rabbinate, I've poured my heart and soul into the universalism of Tikkun Olam. I have truly believed that we could heal this broken world. But after October 7th, I began to question whether those commitments still made any sense. So as we drafted the last part to inspire change in our world, I felt something inside me breaking, wondering, I know how to cultivate a particularly connected, proud, meaningful Jewish life. But if I'm being honest, what change in the world can we really make when the world feels so absolutely broken? In the midst of my struggle, I remembered our ancestors who in times of despair wondered how to move forward. And then I realized, maybe this is our Shema moment as well. A moment where we say, we've got this. At times it has felt like we're standing in the middle of a storm. The winds howling around us, the path ahead blurred by rain, no place safe. And the temptation is to seek shelter, to close ourselves off from the chaos outside. But there's also another choice that we can make. The Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel's choice, to step forward, even in the face of uncertainty, and to stand together with open hearts and steady hands. This isn't just about gathering in a physical place. It's about showing up for each other with everything that we are, with all of our fears and our hopes and our pain and our love. Together, we face the storm. And now is the time. Because, friends, the winds are not dying down. And the skies are not going to clear. But we can step forward hand in hand into the very heart of the storm, to find our refuge not in walls or in barriers, but in each other, in the strength of our connection and the courage of our hearts. Let us say, we've got this, again and again and again, until the words themselves become our shelter. Because when we choose to be Jewish, 2 feet in, fully present, fully engaged, we don't just survive, we thrive. This is not a time for silence. This is not a time for shrinking back. It's about standing tall, wearing our Jewish identity with pride, lighting the menorah, wearing a Star of David, singing the Shema with conviction, celebrating the holidays at home and in Jewish spaces and in public places too, eating our yummy foods, and then sharing it with others. Because our mission isn't just to fight anti-Semitism. It's bigger than that. Fighting anti-Semitism is how we protect the space to live our true mission, to celebrate and thrive and live the beauty of Judaism. We are Jews, and we are not going anywhere. We are unapologetically, proudly, powerfully Jewish. And for all of the fears that we might have about particularism, know that we build stronger bridges of tikkun olam when we are better rooted in our identity. While we may strive to do this in coalition with our partners, we do it not because of them, but because Judaism calls us to this sacred work. We don't dilute who we are to connect or help others. We strengthen our connections by knowing ourselves, our story, our history, and our values. When we are firmly anchored in our Jewish identity, we create bridges strong enough to withstand any storm. So let's build a future with intention. A future woven not by history alone, but by the choices that we make in the present today. Like the strands that tie us together and the strands intertwined on this talit. Our lives are both an inheritance of the past, and they are an active decisions that we make to stand, to act, to remain connected. Each thread is a choice, a binding not only to what was and what has been, but to what we are creating right now. As Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, the children of Jacob, as Jews who wrestle with God, who can wrestle with the challenging moments and challenging questions, and who can also say with confidence, we've got this. We face this moment as those who have always had to make a choice, to step forward or to stand still. And we choose to step forward because we understand that strength in this moment will not come from waiting for the storm to pass, but by standing together through it. That's why, as a congregation, we will help all in Western North Carolina, because Judaism calls all of us to help our neighbors. And it's why we're going to direct a significant portion of our energy to helping the Jewish communities of Western North Carolina. Because whether it is the literal hurricanes or the figurative storms of anti-Semitism, if this last year has taught us anything, it's that no one will take care of Jews like Jews. It is the active weaving of our lives, the deliberate act of holding fast to one another, that gives us resilience. May we choose time and again to see the divine spark in each other, to stand together because of bonds that we consciously forge. This is about more than survival. It's about thriving through the choices that we make every single day. We are a people who choose to rise, who face the darkest times and still reach out for the light. And this is our moment. We can embrace the sacred responsibility. Our faith is more than an inheritance. It is about the choices that we make, to hold each other up and to build a future woven with intention and courage. We will become the legacy that future generations will look to, knowing that in what hopefully will be the darkest moment for this generation of Jews, we stood together, we supported one another, and we marched forward, declaring with every fiber of our being, Shema Yisrael, we've got this. Amen.